Now we're going to move into a panel on relationships. Breaking up is hard to do. Yeah, we see this happening. We build, we form, we grow, and then we let go of relationships as we position for the future. It happens as we grow. Are CUSOs carrying the industry forward? Or are we limiting growth based upon our loyalty? What relationships need to grow and what need to go? Should there be mergers of CUSOs? Let's talk. Yes or no? First, I'd like to introduce John Clace, the President and CEO of Nimbus, to join us. Joining him on the Stay in Relationship side is Steph Luck, the VP of Sales for Trellance. And on the Breakup side, we've got Raj Bandaru, the CIO of Connecta Federal Credit Union. And finally, Denise Wymore. She's coming Field Marketing Manager from Zest AI. I can see we're set up for a pretty good debate here now looking across. John, if you'll start us off, and then we'll head over to Raj, and then back and forth.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Welcome to all of our panel. And my teammate here, Steph, we are going to argue for the side of relationships, for staying, that there's more value in enduring than there is in breaking up. And I can tell you, boy, what a difference a year or two makes for me personally as it relates to this topic. So spent 30 years of my career working in credit unions, 15 as the CEO at Disney's credit union. They are a 100-pound gorilla, Jack, that you stood up to them. Good for you, right? But recently I've moved to president of Nimbus CUSO. And this is where I want to spend the next decade of my career helping credit unions work with fintechs. And our mission is just quite simply is to help credit unions thrive, help you grow. And there's just a lot of areas where we need to do that. Boy, I was taking notes as everyone was talking. And I couldn't help but think about the purpose of our CUSOs. I go back to, one of my colleagues here, Brian Lauer, and in his book, he talks about it's four things. It's return on investment, it's innovation, it's helping to get with scale, and growth. And that we have a lot of new players in our ecosystem that are helping us accomplish these things that we're forming CUSOs, and Nimbus is an example of one of those. And I think to be successful in relationships going forward, we might want to change out the golden rule. I know it's hard. It's time to put it to bed and adopt a new one. I'm going to call it the platinum rule. The golden rule says you treat others how you want to be treated. The platinum rule says treat others as they need to be treated. Right? And a lot of people in our ecosystem now, they're very different cats. I can tell you now, working on this side of the equation, right? They have different needs, and those needs are changing as they grow through their arc of development between starting a CUSO, its mid-stage growth, and later. And so being in tune with that, I think, is really important. And we can save more relationships. We can optimize more relationships by kind of taking that platinum rule. And I can tell you, when you go to business school, a lot of times they talk about be tough. Negotiate those contracts, really hold their feet to the fire. And certainly that's kind of the minimums. I mean, we want to do those good things in our partnerships, right? But if we can transcend that, and this is in our DNA as credit unions, and help our fintech partners and CUSOs think about things that way, then we've really got something. We have a real competitive advantage to bring to the table, because by comparison, we're just going to operate differently than others. We're going to operate by the platinum rule.
Thanks, John. So I'm Raj Bandaru. I'm the CIO at Connecta Federal Credit Union. So prior to joining the credit union world, I was in the banking industry for half my life. So half my brain is bank, the other half is emotionally intelligent credit unions. So having said that, so 10, 15 years ago, if you look at that time frame, right? So credit unions are trying to compete with the banks. Banks had the deeper pockets. They could invest in technology, build all this cool stuff, right? So at JP Morgan Chase, guess what? I had a development team bigger than Microsoft, right? So we could do cool stuff. Credit unions, no way. They can't even think about it. So CUSOs were the answer. Right? So CUSOs gave them the ability to compete with the banks. But now fast forward 10 years or fast forward to now, we have a lot more options. You have a fintech coming online every day or every month. right? So we have a lot of options. So what that means is, from the whether it's contractual, whether it's service levels, whether it's functionality, whatever the case might be, I have to look out for the credit union. So I have to go with what's best out there in the industry. What's priced at the lowest price point? What functionality am I getting at the lowest price point? The reason why a lot of the credit unions continue to stay with CUSOs is there's a loyalty factor, right? Hey, you're putting on the good credit union corporate hat, right? So let's promote CUSOs. They're in the credit union world. They're helping the credit union. So there's a level of loyalty. But if we start thinking about just our pure ROI and functionality and service levels, I have other options, right? So again, today, I'm talking about today. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was a different situation. So for me, it's all about, hey, where am I getting the best deal? Where am I getting the best functionality? So, and I should be nimble and agile and move between vendors, right? That's my take on it. And I live here in Las Vegas, right? So it's just like when I hit the blackjack table. Hey, I lose 4 hands in a row, I move to the next table. It's very simple till I start winning, right? So that's my take on the situation.
Thank you, Raj. I'm Steph Luck. I'm the VP of Sales for Trellance. And of course, being a data and analytics company, I had to look at the data first. And I found it interesting that from 2020 to 2021, there was actually an increase in the number of CUSOs. So we're providing ourselves more options to choose from. At the same time, we know the number of credit unions has been decreasing, and in 2022 is down by 339. So I guess my question is, will there be an inflection point where the number of credit unions simply cannot support the number of CUSOs that are out there? And what I would propose is, we've all heard the term, those that grow together stay together. So could there be an opportunity, instead of breaking up, to instead grow together through mergers, and to look for ways that CUSOs could become somewhat of a super CUSO and find ways that we can complement one another? For example, of the, I think it's 1,012 CUSOs that exist today, about 470 are on lending alone. So no doubt each CUSO has developed its own specialty, right? Its own capability. And as an industry, we can't afford to lose that competitive advantage. So could there be a way that we instead combine forces and make sure that we keep that innovation in-house, and then make it, enough? You don't even have to consider other fintechs, right? You don't have to think about that decision. It's a no-brainer to go with the CUSO and stay within our industry. And I think that would be a key consideration for us to look at how we can make sure that we continue to leverage this unique advantage we have, as Jack pointed out earlier, that we can have CUSOs in our space to remain competitive.
That's a perfect segue for me, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Is Guy Messick here? Is he here?
He's on the golf course right
He's on the golf course. Okay. Guy Messick was fond of saying, if credit unions go away, CUSOs go away, right? And there are 3,000 credit unions that are going to go away if we don't change, if we don't work together and figure out how to save them. So I've been working 2 years ago today on this stage, but we were in a different stage at the Underground. We announced the CU De Novo Collective. How many of you in here know about the CU De Novo Collective? Yes, that makes me so happy. So we just got, we have a foundation. We got our 501(c)(3) approved last week, which was really awesome. But we started this because 3,000 credit unions, are under 250 million. I was at the CULA inaugural. I'm going to cry if I start talking about it. And I got to meet these women that are working so hard to keep a $30 million credit union afloat. And in the last year, I'm going to get all emotional. In the last year, I encountered, I worked with some very, very, very small credit unions, like under 100,000. Lots of these exist. And what I found was they're being held hostage by their core, right? They have 7 to 10 year contracts with the F word that will not allow them to get out. And for a very, very small credit union to get out of a 10-year contract it's a bar tab. It's really not that much money. But those are the relationships that we need to break up. We need to find a way. There needs to be a CUSO of CUSOs, which, by the way, is in the works. And I want to thank Jack and Shauna for opening up this event to small credit unions. This is the first time. Becky, how many small credit unions do we have? more than a dozen small credit unions. They've never really had small credit unions attend in a CUSO before. But Becky Reed coordinated 2 events. Tomorrow it's lunch. You can either have regular lunch or you can have world-changing lunch and come to this meeting talking to small credit unions. And then the following morning it's breakfast. And we are really looking at forming a CUSO of CUSOs. We're calling it Revolution CUSO, so that we can make affordable core processing and all the back office for credit unions. The 6 cooperative principle. Anybody know what it is? 6 cooperative principle. Cooperation among cooperatives, which is what CUSO is, right? And the reason that we're here, and if we don't embrace that 6 cooperative principle, we will lose 3,000 credit unions. We will. And we've got the data, right? We know 181 credit unions merged out of existence last year, and 83% were for expanded services. Guess how they can expand their services? Through the CUSO, right? So, Revolution CUSO, who's with me? Let's do it.
Speak to each other's comments, or should we go straight to questions? Got a question in the back here.
Oh, I love this guy.
Morning, Dan Daggett, Credit Unions First. I'd argue that not only are the cores holding credit unions hostage, but a lot of the service providers that we've worked with over the years are also holding us hostages with these 5- and 6-year contracts and putting up a lot of marketing money to keep those. Any suggestions on how credit unions might navigate breaking those contracts to leverage those other services CUSOs are providing?
Well, I mean, yeah, so the core is a little tough, right, to talk about because your options are limited. But at least where we stand today, at least you have a handful of cores that you can look at. Prior, 10 years ago, we only had maybe a handful, right? At least now you have a whole bunch of new entrants in the market. So from that standpoint, you have choice. But when it comes to all the ancillary products, that's where the CUSOs play, right? So you look at core as your nerve center, but everything sitting around the core is where the CUSOs are or the fintechs are, right? So that's where you have a lot of choice. And that's where, how you do your contracts, how you structure your contracts, how you have your outs, right? So meaning you need to have an out, right? So from the standpoint of, not paying any termination fees. You'll pay some, but it's how you negotiate and get out of contract. So it comes down to that. Again, as we sit today, we have a lot more options and choices, and that's where I made the comment saying, hey, if you want to put on the credit union hat and say, yep, I'm all for the credit unions, which we are, which I am as well, but you're doing yourself a disservice by staying with a CUSO who is providing you subpar service and subpar functionality. So you need to, have the option to compete with your competitors and provide them the best member experience, technology, service, and that could be coming from some random fintech, right? So you need to have the option to get out and, onboard something new. And you need to have that agility.
I think there's an opportunity, too, for us as an industry to come together and almost have kind of a Bill of Rights, which you want in a technology contract. ABA is doing something very close to this, right? And it might have things in contracts saying, look, we all agree non-exclusivity is an important part of any kind of contract going forward. So I think use our superpower of collaboration, our trade associations, to come up with a Bill of Rights around technology, and but help elevate everyone's status with third parties.
Another thing I'd add to that, being on the vendor partner side, working at CUNA Mutual and Trellance now, I've noticed a trend in recent years of more of a proactive approach to ensure strategic alignment. So if you're looking at a 3 or 5 year contract, it's hard to know what the next 3 or 5 years is going to look like for all of us. But if you can ask that partner to share that with you and ensure that it's going down the right path, that could be another way to more proactively ensure you're picking the right partner versus needing to rip off the Band-Aid later.
I think, too, that we might be able to push ourselves to meet with our business partners, maybe on a quarterly basis. Maybe the agenda of that meeting is less about, performance, security, on time, on schedule, on budget. That's nice. That's foundational. What above that is vision and mission. Where are we going next? Where's investment going in R&D? And lead those conversations in a more proactive way as leadership teams, I think would be a good start.
So John, just to comment on John's point, right? So yeah, CUSOs and fintechs. Unfortunately, where we are, if you were developing a product yourself, you kind of know the ins and outs of that product, what works, what does not work. But when you're in bed with a CUSO or a fintech, you have no idea what that product does, because the sales guy is going to say, hey, everything works, right? Everything's great, whatever you need, right? Till you actually see it and implement it. So that's where you need the out, right? So from the standpoint of service levels or delivery or functionality, whatever the case might be, you need outs to get out. Having said that, they'll talk about strategy and technology roadmaps. Yeah, strategy is only as, a strategy is great. Okay, a strategy is a pipe dream without execution, right? So unless they deliver on what they're promising, what good is a strategy or a technology roadmap, right? So that's why the credit unions need to be nimble and have the agility and the contracts bulletproof so that you have an out.
Yeah, it kind of makes you feel like free agency, right, is what you're looking for. And rarely does that work out well. So you do need to have contracts. You do need to be able to exit in something that's unhelpful, or if there's a player in the ecosystem that's an invasive species, for sure. But on the whole, more times than not, partnership, collaboration really is the way forward. But I think we need to partner harder. I mean, much harder than we have before. I mean, we need to be meeting with our partners and talking about what do you need to stop doing, start doing, continue doing in the next 90 days, very specifically, to keep this relationship strong and growing. And giving that kind of care is important dialogue.
And so when we talk about the Revolution CUSO, the first thing that we discovered was the core is key, right? The core is key, and how we talk about that. And we are here really, to blatantly ask for cooperation among the CUSOs, CUSO for CUSOs. So imagine if we could cut the cord for those small credit unions, get them on a good CUSO core, I don't know, that's cloud-based, and then, but then they need all the other services. And when you're $1 billion credit union, no disrespect, but it's totally different mindset, right? 3,000 credit unions are just looking at the basics right now. We just need a core. We need a core provider. And then from there, once we're all speaking the same language, because that's all our research, it came back to that. Once they're all speaking the same language, then it's easy to share. So understand, we lost 86% last year for shared services. So if we can use the CUSO model, CUSO of CUSOs, Super CUSO, Revolution CUSO, to share those, which means we have to come to you all and say, give it to us free or discounted. Well, and the CUSO that we're looking at is not going to give it a return. It's going to be truly an investment in the future of the credit union movement. Because again, if credit unions go away, CUSOs go away, and we are on that path right now. Ooh.
Hi, I'm Melanie Kennedy. I'm with Southwest Financial. We're an $80 million credit union. One of our new strategies that we have really latched onto, that not all of our partners have latched onto yet, is we're asking up front for 0 deconversion fees and term for convenience.
Yep.
And if they choose not to do that, then they might not be the right partner. We feel like it really helps from a partner perspective. One, I'm looking for a partner, someone I can grow with.
Right.
Two, it lets us know how much they really stand behind their product.
Yeah, that's great.
Hi, this is Phil Dupree from Origins. Raj, I just wanted to comment on your comments, and I agree 100%. You've got to be best in class, right? And today with APIs, you really can mix and match. One of the conversations that I had with Keith, who was our chairman, right, your CEO on our board, he's like, Phil, I want you to get into these services, and again, you got to be best in class and compete, because I don't want to be Fiserved. That what value do you see, knowing that you're a CUSO, knowing that our end game is not some event, is there value there when you kind of compare and say services are equal? Does it give you a leg up?
Oh, absolutely. I think John kind of got to that point, in your last comment where you said the CUSOs were, okay, so they felt like, I personally felt like the CUSOs said, okay, so we have a good customer base of credit unions, right? Credit unions are not as pushy, right? So the CUSOs could have taken a backseat and done innovation at their own pace. That's not the case anymore. You have to innovate at the same pace as the rest of the industry. right? You cannot fall behind, right? And to your point, yes. So if a CUSO, with all its benefits to the credit union world, can also innovate as fast as the next fintech, then you're good to go. There's no reason for a credit union to leave.
There's behaviors, though, that are inconsistent, and I've only got to see them in the last couple of years in my role, Phil. And that's when we go in and talk. Many times, it's the number L2, L3, L4 in the organization, and it's not horizontally across the organization. Rather than, if this is strategic, if this matters, then it's all the way back up to the top of house. That cross-functional team is in there with the different disciplines, from security to finance to technology, right? And you're partnering really hard with your technology partners. And sometimes I don't see that. And so it's a good gut check for all of us to say, hey, it's a cross-functional. We heard that earlier today too, all the way back up to, the executive team, learning in your understanding of who your partners are, who your choices are, and you get better outcomes through that for sure.
I have a quick question for you over here, and then we've got a couple having too. I find that there are several business partners entering the industry that know nothing about credit unions. One of the reasons I absolutely love Sarah Bang's role with the regulator, right? In the fact that, so it's this balance of relationships and keeping people and not being locked into contracts. On the flip side, do our vendors need to step up their game and actually know the industry when they come into it?
Yes, they do.
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, there's a panel.
Yeah.
I was going to say mic drop. Absolutely. You need to understand the industry. This is, we all like to say we're unique, but I would say truly the credit union industry is unique. The way that we do business is unique. The way we help our members is unique. So to really understand your client, your customer, is key to being able to doing business anywhere, but especially in the credit union space.
More innovation on the integration side. So Nick, Venture Tech, what you're doing, bringing fintechs in, you have a boot camp day where they get to, hear from credit unions what matters, how to think about it. More of that is just super. Yeah.
So when I worked with CUSO, I'd get contacted by a lot of folks that were trying to break into the credit union world, right? And they'd be like, we want to, be a part of CUSO, and we want to, break into the credit union. And I would describe to them that I think credit unions are like a friendly mafia. Right? They're a friendly mafia. And so I said, if you understand, don't use the word customer, we speak a certain word, tribe, right? But we're really a mafia. So once you figure out what we're about and you embrace that culture, because I think that's our heart, then you're part of the family, right? The mafia will sell for you. We don't see each other as competitors. There's nothing like us, right? But like the mafia, if you screw with them, right, you're dead to me. And I've seen vendors that come in and try to cherry pick the $1 billion babies, and then they go all bank on it. Nope, can't, and the mafia will spit them out.
What
So
else
I
can we?
love that.
Yeah, and what else can we do to accelerate? The partnership advantage, and I think that would be more of us who are sitting in this room go to work for fintechs. Right? You can speed that up by saying there's this melding of together and this knowledge base that needs to share, like who we are and what we do and our values and those things. But also from them, where they're at in their stages. We need to understand and learn. When you're at a certain stage in technology, it means certain things about what you can do and what you can't do. And that's us coming in that direction to learn a little bit more about that. That can only help. Right? There's a question here.
To pick up on Vic Pantia, to pick up on Denise's role in terms of talking about CUSOs coming together to help and collaborate in business models that will support de novo credit unions and small, medium-sized credit unions that may be struggling. If anybody would like to talk about it, I've worked for a large part of my career with 3 CUSOs that have specific pricing models built and designed for de novo credit unions and for small and medium-sized credit unions that basically subsidizes the credit union owners of those CUSOs have said it's part of our role as a successful CUSO to help those that are struggling. And so in the case of CU Answers on the core side, they don't charge anything for the first 2 years of business. They pick up 100% of the core processing, member-facing, back office support roles for those de novos. So if anybody would like to learn more about it, Denise and I have been talking about it for years, so.
Yeah, so come to the breakfast and the lunch. The lunch is tomorrow, breakfast is the next day. Or you can be in that other room.
Hi again.
It's your choice
Taylor.
and we'll judge you.
John Taylor, CU Soul. Denise, one more fan club manager. taking more applicants. Having started my career at the U.S.'s oldest CUSO, the Maine Credit Union League Insurance Trust, and knowing that there's a lot of different, what Dan Daggett said, different agreements that are out there, I would just say right now, eliminate all evergreen clauses in your contracts immediately. That only serves the vendor, that does not serve the credit union, and so many credit unions lose an opportunity to make a positive change for their membership, number one. Number two, understand what relationship is the most important one, I think, which is your relationship with your members and your relationship with your staff, not your relationship with your vendor partners. Because at the end of the day, who are you working for, right? So I would just say that's a little piece of advice. And also, to his point, how many things change in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. I know it's easier, guys. I know they'll dangle a little bit of money at you that they should be sharing with you already. It's not worth it long term. You owe it to yourselves to do that due diligence, and it's impossible for organizations to do a million things well. So put your vendor partners, make them earn your business over and over and over again.
I would just say, I want to build on that, because this is the shift I think we need, and we should continue this discussion after this, is that we need to shift our mindset to that platinum mindset, right? That you are my partner. If I am flexing my organization and my culture, and more of it is outside the organization, if I want to have greater prediction and control, I can treat you as a free agent, or I can treat you as a stakeholder. I can treat you like an employee, right? And so I can partner with you harder and in different ways than maybe we've done in the past. And I would just encourage us, before we take that kind of polar kind of approach, them and us, think about them as truly being partners, which means then we start acting differently with them. And so that's what I'm encouraging us to keep exploring and kind of leaning into that, because I think there's more of a competitive advantage for us than trying to get bigger and tougher than maybe our counterparts are in contracts.
We have two quick comments here to end this panel.
So, hey, Chris Odie, the CU 2.0 in South Bay Credit Union. As someone who spent 18 years at Fiserv, I'm responsible for some of your lousy contracts, right? Yeah, feel free to boo, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
The F word speaks.
And there's a reason why I haven't been at Fiserv in 9 years. But I would add that at Fiserv, as an account executive, sales executive, whatever role I was in, I would negotiate one contract a week, sometimes 2 or 3 a week. Whereas if you take a look at Paris Chevalier, my CEO at South Bay Credit Union, she's going to negotiate one contract every 3 years or longer, right? So who do you think has the advantage in that scenario? So that's why I've always been a big proponent of get someone like me on your board to help you negotiate contracts, or go ahead and hire a third-party consultant who does it all the time, who has the benchmarks. That's step one in fixing your contract problems. Step two is making sure all your contracts are coterminous. Right, so if you've got them all from Jack Henry, or all from CU Answers, or all from Fiserv, whatever it may be. I'm sorry, Vic, I just lumped you in with Fiserv and Jack Henry. Sorry about that. But if they're coterminous, then you have the power, rather than them having the power. Because I would have contracts at Nevada Fed, right, and one would be due in 6 months, and 18 months, and 24 months, and 36 months, and Brad Beal was screwed. He was never getting out of that Fiserv contract. So that would be my recommendation.
Yep. Thank you for coming clean on that.
Thanks. Kevin Landell, Revolution CUSO. I'd like to challenge the industry as well. We've heard a lot of great comments here about what credit unions can do. Here's something for the industry. Think about our providers as our partners, right? And I heard here in the audience somebody say when it was brought up a term for convenience, that's no way to run a business, right? We can't run a business that way. We can run a business that way. Here's some things to think about. Can we create an industry fund to help buy out bad contracts? Can we maybe create a provider fund focused around certain types of providers that want to get together? You may win one, I may win one, but together we win, because those other bad contracts aren't part of the deal. Can we create subscription models instead of long-term contracts, so that I can term, not necessarily for convenience, but because something better comes along? And lastly, zero decon fees. Why are there why are there conversion fees? Okay, there is an effort, we understand that, build that into that long-term contract so I don't have to deal with that at the end. There are things that the industry can do. I'd like both the industry and our credit unions to work as partners.
So if you come to that lunch tomorrow and then breakfast the next day, we can continue that conversation.
Great discussion. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you so much.